morning, everyone. Please let me know if you cannot hear me or I'm breaking up as I come through the presentation. So again, good morning or good afternoon to all of you. And thank you for joining today's presentation, A House Divided, Analyzing Real Estate Options for the Present and the Future. This is a topic that I believe is very much at the beginning of our analysis as divorce finance professionals. I think it's right up at the top of the list along with spousal support. And the reason why this topic is important is because in many cases it informs a lot of your other resulting decisions on the allocation of the marital assets. And so today I wanted to approach this topic from a foundational perspective. Some of you on the call may be new to the CDFA practice, some not. But I think it's important as we start to practice in this area and counsel clients that we have some foundational settings for what we need to do and how we need to approach the topic. Additionally, there will be times perhaps in your practice, depending on where you are geographically, that you may have some high net worth clients. Our program today is not going to address some of the more complicated issues concerned in that, commercial property, 1031 exchanges, and things that are more generic to that socioeconomic level. Today we want to take it in a foundational way, move it forward, get some guidelines, and I'm also going to intersect a little bit with family law software. And we're not going to be figuring out or analyzing anything within the software. My goal will be to take us through, from a practitioner's point of view, to show where the real estate piece intersects within that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So with that, let's move on with our presentation today. We're going to be discussing suggested financial analysis protocols. As I said, we'll be getting into family law software just a little bit. And then I'm going to get into some case studies from my practice. I thought it would be good to talk about some of these areas of buyout, delayed sale, and co-ownership in the context of a real-world situation. So I have culled through my client base, my current base, and some of the ones that I have finished up that I thought were pretty good examples of this. And so we're going to take some time to work through the concepts from that perspective. So suggested financial protocols are areas that I feel you need to make sure you've addressed as you prepare to tackle this subject area of marital real estate with the client. One of the first things you want to take a look at is the property, and it may be the marital home in addition to other pieces of property, but does it have separate property interests in addition to the marital interest? You do want to take that into account because that's going to be a different analysis and computation to determine what part of it is marital, what part is community, and that's going to become key when you start to make decisions on whether you're selling the property, whether the property is going to be maintained, does someone need reimbursement, or what have you. So as you're coming through and they're giving you the story and giving you the documentation, make sure that you're paying attention to that. The other thing, before you even launch into this with the client, is make sure you have sufficient grounding regarding their income, their expenses, and their budget now that they're in the divorce, now that they're in the dissolution divorce arena. You probably will do this as a matter of course, but I'm just underscoring it here because you want to have a solid grounding in all of their income sources, salary, business, bonuses, whatever. You also want to know what are the expenses that are sitting right now within their family unit. All of these actually play in to this real estate discussion because it's going to have something to do with who can maintain it, should it be maintained, should someone keep it, how should it be handled. So make sure that you have a very firm footing in this area as you approach it. In addition, you'll want to make sure that you're totally versed in their tax returns and or their property tax statements for the marital property. This is important because you want to know what type of deductions have been taken. How has the property been treated? Are they getting credits for anything, for energy saving? Make sure that you're conversant with their tax return in a way that helps you to guide them on making a decision about the real property. So taking this time on the front end to really make sure you're doing this kind of homework will really, really help you in the meeting and help your conversation to flow and help you to guide them as a divorce financial planner. Again, reviewing the mortgage bills, making sure you know what's the cost, what's going on, what's the interest rate they're currently paying on this loan. Because if you enter into a refinance discussion, it's going to be important to know where the interest rate is sitting now, where the current interest rate is. Is this going to be something, is this a delta that's going to be an issue later on, maybe something that they don't want to do, or maybe they want to wait to do it to see where the interest rate paradigm is going to go. This next one, scheduling and reviewing inspection appraisal reports, is something that I've integrated into my practice on a regular basis. Anytime we're dealing with any type of real estate asset that is going to be allocated to one party or another, or even subsequently sold, I always counsel my clients to look at this property as if they're the buyer. We all know the story. If we own real estate, condo, townhouse, or a single-family home, there are a lot of things in the home we just ignore. You know, that drawer that actually doesn't close well. The door that squeaks. The floor that's probably uneven somewhere, but, you know, everybody's cool with that because it's not bothering anybody. The siding that's a little chipped, but, you know, we're overlooking that. You know, something in the garage that's broken. We tend to overlook that we deal with on a daily basis. But once a couple enters into dissolution, this asset becomes something that's going to be manipulated. And because of that, I encourage them to act like the buyer. And I have them obtain inspection reports, full inspection reports on the property or properties, however many they have. And I also request that they obtain a real estate appraisal report. And I also request that copies of those reports come to me so that I can see them, because this is also going to be a part of the discussion. I feel that once the clients do this, they really have an idea where their property sits, what kind of shape it's in, what it can realistically sell for, and so we don't have these discussions in a vacuum. What are we going to do? What is it? We know. I want them to know exactly the status of their property and what's going on with it. I've mentioned having a property or properties. Today, a lot of people do have rental properties, maybe properties they had before they got married, or other investment properties. If this is the case, you want to make sure that you're identifying those, obtaining the income and loss statements. If there are any property manager records, Airbnb is a very popular vehicle right now, and so if you're connecting with Airbnb as a third party to rent out that property, then you're going to want to get whatever records are on there so that you have an idea what the income flow is. Hopefully you've gotten the inspection appraisal reports on it so you know what condition it's in, but you want to take a look at the cash flow on all these. You also want to know what is the ownership basis in it. Is it just your client? Did one of your clients get it, as I said? Is this a property that is family owned? And so there are some fractional interest in it. You want to make sure that you've got all of these details set down straight and reviewed, in some instances before you really sit down with the client, so that you're really prepared and you know what direction to go. And so this is not an exhaustive list by any means of the types of tasks you should do, but they're fundamental to my practice. I do them on a regular basis, and they might be something you want to integrate into yours, particularly if you're new and you're seeing clients for the very first time. And you're wanting to make sure that you're presenting well and you're analyzing well. These are some tips to get started and to make sure that you're covering all of the bases. So family law software. I know that a lot of you on the call may be using this. Some of you may not be using this. I wanted to take this opportunity to get into this a little bit from the point of view of really using it. The reason being, our role in the divorce and dissolution process is very key. We are there to assist clients, attorneys, mediators, and any other divorce professionals, guiding individuals through the financial implications of divorce. Our analysis is key to the process, and knowing how to use our software tools to their best ability to enhance our ability to analyze is really key. And so today we will not be analyzing anything in family law software. I'm going to come off this presentation and come into a dummy file that I've set up. And what I'd like to do is just go through some areas within there that intersect with real estate analysis so that you can see where some of these numbers are plugging in. For those of you that are very conversant with family law software, please just follow along. Dan Kane did recently upgrade this software. Personally, I'm a fan of what he did, but some things have moved and some things are reclassified within it. So I thought this would be a good opportunity, since I'm speaking about real estate, to show the different areas and reports and things that you might want to use in the process. So I'm going to be hitting the various areas in here, files and settings. I'm going to go into client info, and then I'm going to round it out, taking a look at some sample reports that might be applicable to what you're doing. And the third section on forms and reports is really important because we might be doing a lot of things. I use this software in real time with clients. I'm actually sitting in the software and working on it. A lot of times you're preparing a group of documentation and analysis for the client to hand off to the attorney or the mediator. So I'm going to be showing some reports that I think are good for that. So please follow me for just a minute. We're going to come out of here, and we're going to go into family law software. So this is my dummy file for Sherry and Timothy. And so we're here in the Files and Settings tab, the green tab that's lit here, and I'm going to use my cursor to kind of follow through. And I thought it would be good to do a couple of things here. One is to go into a section called paper data sheets. Now, I developed my own data sheets in the early years of my practice, and I use that. But I'm bringing this to your attention because if you don't have anything, if you're not using anything, you know, he's put together a fairly good way to come through it. Basic background information, if there's any children, things of that nature. There's also a section to report income and expenses. If the state in an area where you practice doesn't have a court form or other official form, this is a great way for you to capture some of the key information and areas that you see listed here in a very concise manner. And you can do an expense list, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see as you scroll down, there's a lot that you can deal with. Here, connecting with our topic today, is issues concerning the home. Is there any rent? Are there taxes? Are there any expenses regarding the property, et cetera? So, you know, really good form. And again, in assets and liabilities, some of this information will get repeated and maybe fleshed out a little bit more. For our purposes, I'm scrolling down a little rapidly because I want to come to the area on real estate so that you can see that. Again, address of the property, information on first and second mortgage, and just some basic information spaces. So if you don't have one of these forms that you put together or what have you, I just wanted to point out that this was a really good place to kind of capture that information. Additionally, for those of you that are in a paperless frame, you can also have the client fill in this information electronically. And if they're comfortable with that and are comfortable with kind of sensitive information being transmitted over data, this is a way for you to do that as well. Personally, I either like to take it from the client in document form or deal with them in person on it because I am dealing with sensitive information and I don't want to take the risk that that might or might not happen. However, this is a very efficient way to do it. And again, if you and your client are comfortable with this, this is another way to capture some of that same information from the paper data sheet. Another section that is important. A lot of times clients will say to me, how did we get to that figure? Why is that figure different than what I thought it would be? Or how come that number is higher or lower, what have you? And within this software, a lot of that comes from assumptions. And so I wanted to point this screen out because as you're setting up your client file, this is a way when you're going through their projections and you're going through the various things that they are handling, this is a way for you to maybe set some things or change some numbers to reflect what they want. The number of years you want to project out, your start year, your percentages, all of these are embedded in one way or another into the software. There's also sections here to deal with state and local taxes and things of that nature, even the terminology that you want to use, and then of course some case information if you have a case that's actually in litigation. So this is kind of the opening salvo for using family law software, for getting yourself set up, and for capturing information and understanding how some of the assumptions and settings are working. So we want to move now to the Client Info tab. And I want to bring your attention to this section here under Financial Disclosure. And we're going to move into Assets and Debts. Take a look at that. Again, you're now in a situation in the software where your calculations will now fold into an analysis situation. And the files and settings you're simply gathering, that's not transferring to the software. These are some of the screens that will transfer to the software from an analysis point of view. And so here in number 1, we're dealing with the real estate. And you can see that you'll put in all the applicable information. If there is a first or second mortgage. I haven't dealt with a property situation that it includes anything more than a second mortgage. However, there is a help screen if you are dealing with other encumbrances on the property, a third mortgage, where they will tell you what to do with that and how to handle that, so you're not left knowing not how to enter that, because that needs to be entered in a specific way in the real estate. So assuming you put in some of this basic information, I wanted to call your attention to a couple of things. The footnote and the note. A lot of times things will come up in a meeting that maybe you need to follow up on. Maybe the discussion has brought up some other facts that fold into the work that you're going to need to do that weren't involved in any of the paperwork or weren't involved in the documentation. Maybe something new has happened. Those are 2 ways to capture that within your client file, so you don't forget about them, number 1. If you write them on another piece of paper, you may not have that handy, or you may lose it. So this is a good place to capture that. On the footnotes, they can be appended to your report, or you have an option to not print the footnote if you don't actually want the footnote appended to your report. So those are just ways to kind of capture your notes and thoughts. You always want to go to the More Info button and begin to capture the information that applies to your case. This is foundational here, so you're checking the radial dials that are important. Your current value and appreciation will hopefully be obtained either from a formal appraisal or from other documentation. If you don't have that yet, Zillow.com does a pretty decent job. It's not the expert out there, but they're usually in the ballpark for property value. So if you don't have that yet, you don't have it from the client yet, you can input the address of the property and find out kind of where you stand. Again, you're going to be putting the specifics in on the first and second mortgage and so forth. I mentioned at the onset for some of the foundational protocols that you wanted to identify whether or not you have separate property interest in the marital real property. For those of us in California, you're seeing a reference here for Moore's Marston, so I'm just going to take a minute, just a very quick minute, to just explain why that's here. In California, we had 2 cases, In re Moore and In re Marston, which went through the protocols and the analysis for determining the separate property interest calculation in real property. as far as I'm knowing, this type of thing is specific to the state of California. So those of you on the call don't need to be particularly concerned about it, but those of you on the call from California, you're familiar with this, and they do give you the case references for it if you kind of want to delve in a little bit deeper. But for those of us who practice in California, this is kind of the framework that we are needing to work in, and so that is why it's included in our stream for those of us who are here. You can also get into the proposed division of the community equity on the property, the section on basis, original cost, improvements. Again, number 2, improvements, going back to your review of the documentation. That's why I said all of that is important as a foundation of protocol, because you're going to need it coming forward, all of that information. And you also do have some additional streams here at the bottom to help you. And some of those, they tend to look like this. They're basically text. So, I mean, you go into it, it shows you what to do, gives you some tips, and takes you, takes you further on into the process of what you need to be doing. So that's just kind of an area to kind of let you know where you need to be in the real estate zone for coming through it. Because we're not actually working through an actual case in family law software, because that could be a presentation in and of itself, we're not going to be going over the analysis and negotiation tab right now, because that's something where you're going to need to have information input. But I just wanted to show you where this is. The final tab I wanted to go over was forms and reports. And for those of you that have been using this for a while, you're going to see that it's looking a little bit different. So there is a tab for those of you who are practicing attorneys on the call and do some financial work. You can see that your reports are organized a little bit differently. And you need to set your start here, how you want to label your reports, and so forth within this particular tab. And they are divided by kind of subject area and focus area. If the majority of us on the call today are divorce financial planners and CDFAs, you're going to be spending a lot of time in this tab right here for planners. Absolutely. So even the listing of reports looks a little bit different, because now it's a longer list. If you remember before, it was divided up into categories. And so to kind of help us a little bit, I'm going to focus on some of the reports in this list that you might find interesting. Because our work is at a high level, and because we're so integral to the process for divorcing couples, it's important that we look good. And this section of family law software helps us do just that. We can set report options so that you can determine the names, the types of information you want, how you want that to look, whether you want a custom cover, all of these things. You have an opportunity to do your footnotes. You can change your report sequence. So you may be clicking off several ones, but you want them to occur in a certain order as you print them out and put them together in notebook form. And you can also modify your report labels and do quite a few things to really professionalize your look as you're presenting this information to your client. It's also very helpful to know where these reports are located and how to get to them quickly if you're in a client setting. So this is very key. The other thing that's very helpful is graphs. I have done some testimony as an expert witness for marital standard of living, and I've done a webinar on it as well. But the in-court testimony has been focused. My report usually does include graphs. I have found that the judges that I have been involved with really enjoy that almost over the numeric equation balancing work that we do. They like to see them. They like to see, what that really means. And so this is a section that when I do that work, I don't do that work as a large part of my practice, but when it does come up, I really make sure that I make use of this function of the software to determine it. Usually the colors are there. This has no information in it, so it's just a 50-50 pie. But there are things that I just include in here that I think make my report kind of shine and kind of step out and kind of jump, and give a graphical reference to it as well. So coming back in to our Floor Planners tab, let's take a look at form number 7, which is equity in real estate, or report number 7. So this one will let you know, based on the property value over the years, bracketed and set, however far out you're going to go, what the equity is going to look like for Sherry and for Timothy. And it's a good way for folks to see, how will the property actually be progressing in value. This will have a lot to do with perhaps if they want to have a delayed sale, for example. What will that mean for them as a family financially? What will that do? What will that mean? So that's a good form to highlight that. Then also we can look at form number 43, and we will scroll down. And this is for the sale of real estate. I'm not actually talking about that today necessarily, because that is a process that tends to be more straightforward than not. But certainly, if you're going to be selling this, this screen would have a lot of information on it that would be helping you analyze the cost of the sale, seller's commissions, and various other expenses connected with selling the property. So if that's a form that's a part of your discussion, you'd want to use that. Another one that's really good, I didn't mean to check that, I meant to click on that, sorry. Another one that's really good is looking at this on an after-tax basis. And I'm going to come, you see the real estate's at the bottom. But up here, you want to make sure that your federal and state taxes rates are reflected in here, because again, we're looking at the community property on an after-tax basis. So a lot of times people want to know, where will I stand? What does this mean? Where is it going? This is a good screen to figure that out. And again, connecting with our topic of real estate today, you can see that you can also put this in here, and it will also chart out where you are. So this is another good screen for the real estate and the community property as a whole. You might want to actually look at the community and separate property just the way it is. So number 50 in the list, again, the real estate equity, showing you this, giving you these options to see where you actually are and where you're sitting. 53 is one that we had gone over assumptions earlier, and I'm just including this screen as a listing of the key rates, tax status, the assumptions, market value for both parties. This kind of ties in with the original one at the beginning, but I just wanted to show you where this was in the report list, in case you wanted to see another version of it and see it a little bit more expanded. And then we're going to move down to the 2 here at the bottom, so 63. Again, going through the division of community property. These are all different views of the same thing, but it's important that you're able to navigate through the software, particularly if you're in a meeting where you're doing it. So you're not hesitant, you don't know where it is, you don't know how to get to it, you can get to it immediately, and you can begin to work with them through it. So this is just the division of community property chart that's showing. Real estate, of course, is up at the top, so again, we see that reflected. And if there was information in here in the dummy file, you would be able to see the line for where each of the parties stands with the community property. And finally, income summary, always a good one. Again, going back to what I said at the beginning, for understanding the basis of where your clients are coming from, so that you can understand how that will impact the negotiation of the real property. And so that's actually going to kind of close up this section on family law software, just walking you through, letting you know, particularly since it's been updated, where everything is and where it's sitting at this time. And we will now return to the presentation, and we're going to move into our case studies now. And as I stated, these are actual client matters that I'm either currently working on or have just recently finished. And I want to take the opportunity to go through these with you to see how some of these things end up. And I'm starting with one as an introductory case because this is a brand new case for me. And I'm going to talk about it in terms of what we may be looking at in this case. Decisions have not been made on the real estate portion of it yet, but I have tasked the clients in this case to get an inspection, which they have done, and to get an appraisal, which they have done, and I have those reports now that I'm reviewing. So let me walk you through. I'm calling it workflow simply because it is a workflow matter for me right now. We're just coming into it. So let me just walk you through some of the facts and then walk you through some of the considerations that I'm having and that you may also have as you're working with your clients. Let's talk about Michael and Lisa a little bit. They have one daughter who's 18. Michael is a computer engineer, and you're seeing that I have Lisa listed here as President of Domestic Operations, otherwise known as the PDO. I have real issues with stay-at-home mom. I don't think it actually really reflects any of the work that anyone does in raising a family and bringing a family forth. And so I've retitled it for my own purposes. And so anyone that's doing that work is the PDO. They're the President of Domestic Operations. And that's how I see it. So that's kind of my personal viewpoint on it. So it's Michael, it's Lisa, and it's their daughter. Michael is the sole wage earner in the family. There is a 10-year age difference, and I'm going to address that in just a minute. There is a 10-year age difference between them, and she is the older spouse. She is currently 61. And she worked as a registered nurse prior to the marriage, did not work after the marriage. It's also another key fact. And unfortunately, her professional credentials have expired, and in order for her to even become conversant in the registered nursing field, she would almost need to do some re-education at this point. Her intent, however, is not to re-enter the field. And there are some indications that she has no intention of seeking any type of future employment in any way, part-time or otherwise. But that is to be determined. But those are the initial conversations that we've had. So let's talk about their marital home. So their home approximately is worth $1.2 million. They do have a first mortgage balance on it of $309,748, and they have a pretty good interest rate at 2.75. Their mortgage payment is $2,573. Currently, Michael has moved out of the residence and has been out since May of 2015. So currently, the household is supporting two real estate matters, his rent and also the mortgage on this property. So where we are in our discussions at this point is, frankly, I'm trying to set the budget for the family right now. And I'm also moving into the area of spousal support because there are some serious budgeting issues happening with the amount of income coming into the household right now. Some of my thought processes on this are whether or not really Lisa can retain the house. I know the market. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and everything, you know, is exponential out here. And very expensive. So the issue becomes, can she really retain the home? I'm just going through some questions that are coming to my mind and that I will deal with in the coming weeks and working with them. And that retention issue for her has to do with, will the spousal support allow her to stay in the home? Is she going to be able to hold on to the home with other people coming in? She's not going to be working. My concern is if something happens to Michael and his work, then the ability to stay in the home will now be compromised, and the home might have to be, unfortunately, put on the market in an unexpected nature. So we're looking at that. I'm looking at, should there be a sale of the property? If there is, I'm concerned about capital gains and her equity split, and whether or not she can actually, move into another property, actually, with the money that she has coming out. And for those of you in parts of the country where this is not so much of an issue, it really is an issue here. And it's one that I have to deal with clients, because I need to make sure that A, they're not house poor in more than one respect, either in staying in that residence or trying to acquire something else. So those are the types of things that are coming to mind. And I'm looking at other scenarios that we're going to discuss today, such as the co-ownership, should there be a delayed sale. Their daughter is currently at a community college, but will be transitioning to a 4-year school, so whether or not she's going to be in the home is an issue. And so those are some of the things that are coming to the table in this case, and some of the things you might have in some of your client work. And I just wanted to point out where you might start, what are some of the things you might want to do, and how you might want to do it when you have a new case and moving through. So that's our family, Michael and Lisa. So our next family is very interesting. So this is Lawton and Casey, and by the way, the names of my clients have been changed. These are not their actual names. So Lawton and Casey don't have any children, as you can see here. You're seeing some question marks here with the fact that they were married in 1996. And we're at the point in this engagement where they can't seem to come to terms with what the date of separation is. Their paperwork has not been filed yet, and I should say in the previous case with Michael and Lisa, their court dissolution paperwork has also not been filed yet, because they can't decide whether they want to actually divorce or legally separate. So there's that. In this case, they can't decide on the date of separation, which is why you have the question mark there, and I am really working with them now to get that date kind of buttoned down, because the wife is the one, Casey is the one moving forward with the dissolution, and her position is she disconnected from the marriage some time back. But we may need to look at a more current time that kind of includes both of their thought processes in when the dissolution actually was something to consider. So in Lawton's case, due to some personal issues, he's had an unequal employment situation. He has been, in the early years, in the middle years of the marriage, quite successful as a wine broker, has worked for some major wine houses. But Casey has actually, for a good stretch of time, actually been supporting the family and their home on her income as an interior designer. So their situation includes one family home. They don't have any other pieces of property. As you can see here, there's a first mortgage balance of $360. They have a 3% interest rate, and their mortgage payment is $1,577. Now, they took out a second mortgage, which year? I'm forgetting which year it was now, but it was more towards the middle of their marriage. And they took this mortgage out in order to invest in something else. That investment, unfortunately, did not work out. But be that as it may, there's a second mortgage sitting on the property where their monthly payment is $160, and they have a 3.2 interest rate. Their situation very much tracks in the family law software, where, of course, you're going to want to put this information in. The other part of this case that is very interesting, and you'll see it here under my issues, ability to refi by the wife. In my CDFA practice, I've, over time, kind of built up a team of professional, go-to professionals that I can rely on to provide services as I come through my analysis. One of these individuals is a mortgage broker. She and I know each other professionally, and what I asked her to do in this case is to actually do a soft qualify on Casey, because what Casey wanted to do was to buy out Lawton's interest in the home and retain the marital home. It is located in a very nice area in the East Bay part of the Bay Area here. And she's very comfortable there, and that's where that's going. So what I had her do I had the mortgage broker do a soft assessment on Casey. And what that actually brought forth was that it was going to be kind of tight for Casey to do it, but she could do it, and they were going to be able to take the cash out in order to satisfy his marital obligation for the equity. In this particular case, Casey came to me before discussing a divorce with Lawton in order to get kind of preset, and we're continuing to work on it now. Lawton has now been brought into the discussion of the dissolution, and he is aware that Casey does want to dissolve the marriage. Surprisingly, he did not present the challenge that we both thought he was going to. So he's been very cooperative to date with this process, and I'm hoping that that attitude continues. But he is willing to move out of the home. He has no problem with the buyout and the move out. They did look at both of them retaining the residence, but for reasons I'm not going to get into in this webinar, they decided to actually do that. One of the reasons why the buyout actually makes sense is that Lawton is actually going to be able to obtain his own housing, and he'll be able to support that on his salary. They are discussing now the necessity is a very, very, very low margin of needing to provide spousal support to Lawton because he recently took a job with a major wine house at a higher salary than he's normally been making. So spousal support may not be an issue in the case, but in looking at the relative basis of each party's ability to hold on to this house, even with the new job, she's in a stronger position to do that. And they didn't think it wise in the real estate market, you know, for one person to get a new home or one person not to get a new home. So we are still working through the mechanics of the buyout. It is currently under review by the underwriters right now, and we are looking to see what the final numbers are so that we can begin to talk about the other assets in the marriage that need to be divided. But they will be moving towards a buyout, and I think actually that given all the factors that I know about this case, I think that is the smart way for them to go. The other component to look at is a delayed sale. And so I'm going to talk about this couple because they have done something very interesting here. So it's Jonathan and Sarah, and Jonathan's an educator. They've been married 18 years. Sarah is an IT professional with a major corporation here in the Bay Area. They do have 2 children, a daughter 17, a son 13. Jonathan moved out of the house in early 2015, and so Sarah is residing in the residence with their daughter, and then the son is going back and forth between the marital residence and where his dad is currently living. So some issues here in a delayed sale, and why would you even have one? Why would this even be something that's on the table for you? A lot of times the house is being held for personal reasons. A lot of times couples want to take advantage or not take advantage of the instability in the market and hold on to the house until things calm down with interest rates or buyers and that sort of thing. In this case, we have a personal reason for delayed sale. Their daughter is a rising senior in high school at the moment in the fall and has requested that her mother and father hold on to this residence. This is where she grew up for at least the pendency of her freshman year and the summer thereafter because she wants to come home and not have to experience that change that she knows is coming, but she wants to come back to the home. Both her mother and dad have acquiesced to this. And we've done some interesting things in this case. You can see that their house, actually the 1.5 is wrong. Their house just went up in value. It's actually worth 1.8 now. Those are the comps in the neighborhood because some homes recently sold for higher amounts in their particular neighborhood. However, their first mortgage balance is $465, and their original mortgage payment was $2,946. The reason why you see this in parentheses right here is because they also agreed with respect to the marital real estate that since they were going to do a delayed sale, and I should say also that Sarah is needing to provide spousal support to Jonathan. There is a pretty large amount of disparity in their salaries. Since she's going to have to do that, she and Jonathan came to agreement that they would refinance their house for an interest-only loan, which they have done. It took forever to get completed, but it is done. That has dropped her mortgage payment to $1,500 a month. They both understand that they will not be paying down principal between the time this loan closed and the time they actually put their house on the market. And this is freeing up money for her to then maintain the residence and also take care of her spousal support obligation to him. The other interesting thing that happened here, and I don't know whether this is just something available in California or not, but another member of my professional circle is a divorce and life coach, and she brought a product to my attention called the Home Liquidity Tool by a company called Baristone. And my clients here are using this property to take money out of the residence that they're going to need for some other purposes, for improving the property. They set some money aside in certain buckets for the college trips and the auditions their daughter has to make because she's an oboe player and what have you. It's a very interesting tool. It does not sit on your credit report, and it does have some interesting twists and turns to it. I did interview him, and if you want to know something more about that, I'm happy to discuss that offline. But that was an interesting insertion into my analysis with them into how they're handling the real estate. They have not set a date certain for the sale at this time, but it will be timed in relation to whatever is going on with their daughter. So that may be into sophomore year or not, but they will hold on to the house. The wife will remain in it, and we are still working through some things. We're about to finish up working actually with them. There are a few more things on the table we need to kind of button down. But that's kind of what went on with the real estate portion of our conversation in case study number 3. Case study, number 4 is an issue of co-ownership, which you will also see. And it'll also be driven by some very specific facts relative to the couple. So Charles and Hannah, this is a family that I concluded at the end of 2015 working with them. No children. They had a marriage of pretty long standing with 22 years. Charles is in corporate management, and Kevin's involved in real estate vacation rentals. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And what are the issues here? Well, this one was very interesting. The real estate that you see indicated at the bottom of the screen is not their marital home. They were basically renting. Before there was any indication that the marriage was going to dissolve, there was an agreement to purchase a condominium outside the state of California, and to then use some of the equity in that condominium to purchase another and to begin to build an investment portfolio of vacation rentals. That was the plan. When the dissolution came on table, that plan kind of went off calendar, but then we were faced with how are we going to handle the real estate? So you can see you have 2 pieces of property here, one with an approximate value, which she told me recently has actually gone up. But at the time I closed with them, it was $450,000. They have a first and second on that one. The second was taken out to purchase a property that's now valued at $410,000, and you can see that there's a mortgage balance on there. We had fairly lengthy discussions on this, as the husband really didn't want anything to do with this real estate at this point and was really pushing for it to be sold. She, on the other hand, had been boots on the ground in acquiring the real estate, getting it up and running, and managing it. And she previously had a career in real estate prior to the marriage, so she was bringing that professional knowledge forward and wanted to hold on to it. Therefore, in the course of our discussions about what would happen absent a sale, because we could not get consensus on selling these two properties, we came to an agreement that what they would do for a specific period of time, and they noted that in their agreement, that they would co-own these properties. She's going to take responsibility for the mortgage payments because she is bringing in enough income from her vacation condo management business to be able to support those. She has given him assurances through mortgage insurance, private mortgage insurance that she's taken out to protect him in the event she's not able to make those payments. And then what's going to happen at a designated time, she's going to reach out to him, and they're also, going to be taking the tax deductions on the property as well. At a designated time, one of two things are going to happen. If she decides that she does not want to hold on to the property will be sold. On the other hand, if she decides to keep it, they have language in their agreement whereby he is going to cooperate with all the execution of title documents to take him off title to the property. She will, at that point, go through the process of applying for the refinance, and those properties will be titled in her name. The other thing that happened here as an interplay between spousal support and the real estate allocation is that in order to balance it out and equalize it out in addition to their other assets, she agreed to take a lump sum buyout of her spousal support at a much lower amount so that she could have the possibility of acquiring these properties. And I wasn't actually sure they were going to, their relationship became very difficult while I was working with them due to the reasons why the marriage was ending. But at the end of the day, they actually have been cooperating in a tax sense. They have been exchanging documents, and they have been doing everything that needs to be done to support the co-ownership. I'm going to add one last thing before I bring everything to a close. In co-ownership, be sure in their agreement that you make sure that they have in their agreement either an end date for this or time periods where they're going to review the arrangement. And the reason why I say this is because a lot of times when we're doing this work, we're doing it in present day, and sometimes we get the mindset that this is the way things are always going to be. Not always the case. Someone could remarry, someone could be disabled, someone could have a serious illness, any number of things. So the co-ownership agreement should either be reviewed in minimum no less than every 2 years, particularly if it's going to go out for a longer period of time, or make sure that they discuss and agree upon a date certain when maybe this relationship is going to change. The idea being you want to make sure that your clients, whether it's a delayed sale, whether it's co-ownership, a buyout's a little bit more clearer. So for delayed sale in co-ownership, you want to make sure that as life changes and life goes, they don't have to return to court or return to renegotiation of the agreement. You want to make sure that all the contingencies are there for what happens with the real estate to try to avoid that. So those are the 4 case studies that I wanted to bring to the table to sort of illustrate how these topics could come up for you in your practice. And at this point, Laura, if you can hear me, if there are any questions from those on the call, we have, I think, a few minutes left in our hour together. Not as much as I wanted, but we have a few minutes left, and I'm happy to take those questions.
We do have a couple of questions for you. We had a couple of people ask which version of family law software you're using, because theirs looks a little bit different than yours.
Okay, so I don't have the version number, but I can send it out. I don't have it at the top of my head, but in July, Dan Kane sent out an email indicating that there was an upgrade to the software. So if you did not receive that email, reach out to Dan, and I'm sure that he can forward that to you. So the version of the software that I'm working with is July 2016 version with the upgrade.
Okay, great. And then going back to case study number 3, someone asked what the tool was you mentioned that can be used to access equity in the house.
It's by a company called Barastone, B-A-R-A-S-T-O-N-E. They are located in San Carlos, California. And Mark Rogers is one of the founders of that company. Again, I'm not sure whether it's a product that's used nationwide. I thought he told me it was. But you can certainly reach out to him. And if you need a telephone number for him and you don't want to Google it, I do have that in the file for that particular client, and I'm happy to supply that as well.
Great. I think that we have one more question going back to case study number 1.
Okay.
Mitchell asks, would I be correct that the appreciation in the property has been substantial and possibly taxable as a gain upon sale?
Okay, repeat the question again because I missed the first part of it. Repeat it again.
Sure. Would he be correct in assuming that the appreciation in the property has been substantial and possibly taxable as a gain upon sale?
Yes, I did not address that. I did have it in my notes and neglected to address that. That is correct, and that is also one of my concerns because they will get the $500,000 exclusion, but they probably will not escape capital gain on the sale of that residence. And with her not having independent income, that is a concern, and thank you for bringing that to the table. I neglected to mention that.
Okay, great. We are running out of time right now. I don't want to go over, but is there a way that people can contact you if they have any follow-up questions?
Yes, they do. Let me come to it. So what you should see in front of you is my contact information, and as I said at the onset, please feel free to reach out to me by email or phone, and I'm happy to go over anything that is happening in your practice that you may want to get some advice on, or I'll answer any questions or clarify anything in this presentation that we didn't have time to get to that you may want some clarification on.
All right, Karen, thank you so much. I think that's all we have for today, and we will send all the follow-up questions and comments on to you later today. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you next month.
Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.